if you're doing work that AI can do, AI is not going to come and take your job. AI is going to allow you to hand off that repetitive work for the AI to do, but then allows you to go and do what a human does the best, to be creative, to do the analysis, to engage with people.
Welcome to The Thinking Leader, brought to you by Red Team Thinking. Bad leaders react, good leaders plan, and great leaders think. Each week, you'll get new ideas and insights from business executives, military experts, and innovative thought leaders to help you lead more effectively and better navigate your complex world. Now, here are your hosts, best-selling business author and top-rated leadership speaker, Bryce Hoffman, and former RAF Wing Commander and business agility coach, Marcus Dimbleby.
Hello and welcome to another episode. Marcus, always a pleasure to see you, sir. What shall we talk about today? It's just the two of us.
It is indeed, and I'm over in wonderful Blighty again. So I've been doing some research this week, and I came across the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs Report 2023. Now, I know we've done a lot of work on the 2021, so This, I think, would be great. And I've been looking through it, and there's some fascinating insights here that I think I'd really like to discuss with you today and for our listeners.
Yeah, let's share it with our listeners. Let's start with I'm looking at it here. Let's look at first. They have the top 10 skills of 2023, where we're at right now, and I'm very happy. And what this is, folks, for those who don't know, this is a survey the World Economic Forum does of leaders all over the world about what are the skills they see as most important now, and what do they think are going to be the most important in the future. And I'm very happy to see that analytical thinking and critical thinking are number 1 and 2 right now, which is something that is near and dear to us, because that's exactly what we teach folks is applied critical thinking and analytical thinking and decision making. And it's something that is been working its way up the chart over the years, and it's edifying to see it in the top slot. What are you seeing when you look at the current 2023 top 10, Marcus?
Indeed, yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because, these are the skills judged to be the greatest importance to workers at the time of this survey. So it's just fantastic to see that thinking is what's at the top 2 slots. And then that third slot, I love resilience, flexibility, and agility. What's concerning me looking at this is leadership and social influence is number 9, empathy, number 8, quality control. People don't think we need quality control. It's a low one down at number 10. So it's interesting, the disparity between the sort of left and right of arc here that we're seeing, because ultimately, as we know, leadership is what enables lots of most of these things. And obviously,
well, I think the reason you're seeing that is because people are realizing that old models of leadership aren't what's needed, and this command and control, tell folks what to do thing. What's needed is thinking leaders. As it's the name of the podcast, folks. It's the name of the show. It does what it says on the tin. And what thinking leaders need is analytical and creative thinking. And I think people see that. I think people, recognize that just telling people what to do is not as valuable as it was once perceived to be. I mean, if you think about it, an effective leader, 20, 30 years ago was someone who could mobilize their team, and get them to do the things that were judged needed to be done. Whereas now, and as you point out, this is looking at what are the skills that all employees are seen as important. I think people see that everybody needs to be able to think for themselves and not run off and go and do their own thing, but it goes back to what we always talk about. People want to make a difference, and they want to have the skills to be able to make a difference. They don't want to just defer to someone who's higher up on the totem pole and wait for them to tell them what to do.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? When you look at the left side, the top 5, if you had all of those effectively working across your organization, you don't need much else.
It's analytical thinking, creative thinking, resilience, flexibility and agility, motivation and self-awareness. Love the self-awareness thing. Yeah. And curiosity and lifelong learning. Yeah. Everything else follows from that. You get that, and quality will follow. You get that, leadership will follow. You get that, empathy and active listening will follow, dependability, attention to detail, technical literacy. All those things will follow from those things. So I think people sense that. And I think that's a good sign.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it?
Then the next slide is the top 10 skills on the rise.
Indeed. So these are what are judged to be increasing in importance most rapidly between now and 2027.
And look what number 1 and 2 are.
Pole position, and number 2, creative and analytical thinking again, which is great to see. So that follows on from desire. But leaping up into number 3, no surprise, technological literacy. People realizing the requirement to understand tech.
I am concerned about one thing here is I see systems thinking is on here, but it's number 6.
Yeah.
And we were just talking last week about systems thinking and how important it is. And it's good that it's on the top 10.
It's always good.
I think that I'm a little concerned that it's not higher up, but it's interesting. It's above AI and big data, which I find interesting.
I know.
And what's fallen off here, to a point we were just talking about, is leadership.
So does that reflect on the comment you made that it's deemed as not important going forward because of the probably bad impression people have on leadership today? So there's lots of work to be done there on the evolution, I believe, of leadership that we require for today's complex world.
Right, because again, I think it comes down to the model of leadership that people are looking at. If you have leaders who have creative and analytical thinking, who have technological literacy, who are committed, who have curiosity, resilience, flexibility, and agility, systems thinking, they're going to be effective leaders.
Right.
If you have leaders who are just good at telling people what to do, not so much. And I think that's why you see that slipping off the chart here.
Yeah, because leadership is an outcome, isn't it? Good leadership is an outcome of the things we're seeing here. If we do all of these, then you would become an effective, capable leader. And what really interests me on here, that's a new entry, is sort of talent management.
Before you move to the new entry, I just want to say I couldn't agree with you more, Marcus. It's I love how you said that. Leadership is an outcome. I just want to stop there for a second and think about that. Leadership is an outcome. And I think that's why you see it slipping off of the chart here, is because the old way of thinking about leadership was that leadership was a skill.
Yeah.
Getting people to do what you want them to do was a skill. It was taught. There's all sorts of books and courses and college classes about getting people to do what you want them to do. But as you've just said, that's real leadership is the product of other things. It's not the thing itself.
Correct.
And that's why effective leaders are those leaders who equip themselves with the sorts of skills that are on this list. And it's interesting. It goes back to, one of my favorite Patton quotes. Don't tell people how to do things. Tell people what needs to be done and let them surprise you.
And get out of their way.
And get out of their way. Right. And get out of their way. And, I think that's a really important thing to understand when we start unpacking the difference between leadership as a skill and leadership as an outcome.
Yeah. And maybe that's why these organizations create their leadership training programs at a certain level, at a certain age for people when they get onto the ladder, and then they suddenly appear on a leadership training program 15 years in and wonder, have I not been leading before? Whereas, these skills are what we can enable people from the minute they arrive in the workplace. Your Gen Zs, your interns, everybody's capable of effective leadership and should be. And good organizations are the ones that permeate leadership throughout the different levels of the organization. It's not just that revered capability or skill set for a few at the top. It's something that everybody and anybody should be capable of and aspire to be effective at.
The other interesting thing looking at this slide about the skills on the rise is I'm looking at they color code them by types of skill.
Mm-hmm.
And the number one type of skill is cognitive skills. And what do we always start off every single one of our boot camps, every single one of our classes with, Marcus, is we tell people that what is red team thinking? It's a cognitive capability. And it's a cognitive capability that enables critical thinking, engages critical thinking in leaders and in teams, and it enables distributed decision making,
mm-hmm.
and encourages diversity of thought. And that's that's exactly what you see reflected in here is this demand for cognitive skills. The second highest weighted category of skills is self-efficacy.
Yeah, I love that.
I do too, which includes curiosity, lifelong learning, resilience, agility, motivation, and self-awareness. And again, these are what are we teaching people? Awareness of how your brain works, cognitive biases, heuristics, logical fallacies, teaching people tools like 4 ways of seeing, 5 whys, 6 strategic questions, all designed to get people to reflect on themselves, on their plans, on all of this. And then most important of all, resiliency. I mean, at the end of the day,
mm-hmm.
what we're really teaching people is resiliency. And you and I were talking about this yesterday. And the analogy popped into my head, which I think I've since shared with like 3 different people because I love this analogy. I said that leaders wake up every day, I think right now, and this is true, business leaders, government leaders, military leaders in every capacity. They get up every day and they head for the door bracing for what's the baseball bat that's going to hit me in the face today.
Yeah.
And we were sharing this with one of our colleagues, Alvit, and she said that the thing she liked about the analogy is that I didn't say if a baseball bat's going to hit me in the face today, but what baseball bat's going to hit me in the face today. And what resiliency is, what we're trying to do with what we teach leaders is how to dodge, not just dodge that blow, how to dodge that blow that's coming at you every day, but how to dodge and deflect it, but also how to take advantage of it. How to say, okay, this is not going to ruin my day. This is going to create challenges and opportunities for me, for my organization. So what am I going to do with those? How am I going to overcome those challenges, push that baseball bat away? But what opportunities does that create then that I can take advantage of for myself, for my team, for my organization? And I think that to me is just a great image of resilience and the sort of resilience that people need to cultivate today.
It is.
And you see it reflected on this chart.
Yeah. And if you've got that mindset, then you're not risk averse, which is what we see so much of. People are fearful of risk. And we know how risk is managed in organizations with your dreadful rag statuses that people just change the color of to make sure they don't get a good telling off in the update. But we need people to become more risk aware and
yes, take
these big bets, take big risks. And if you do that with the confidence and the clarity of what we're enabling, people with these tools and techniques, then taking these risks isn't that big a risk because you're prepared, you're aware. And if it does go wrong, you've got mitigations in place. You've got the ability to take a punch in the face and carry on. And I think that's what you want. And you're just looking at these capabilities, these cognitive skills and self-efficacy. If you've got those as individuals in your teams and capabilities across your workforce, that's all you need. That is an easy group of people to lead because they're going to be leading themselves. They're going to be leading you.
Right.
You as a leader can follow where required. You can provide the direction. And as you said earlier, just let them get on with it, get out of the way and watch how effective these people become because they've got these skills that are clearly on the rise and are clearly needed. And I love how these are sort of being self-generated by individuals rather than companies saying this is what we need. These are coming from the actual workforce, which is fascinating.
And I want to go back to what you just said about risk, because I think it's so important. It's informed risk.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an important distinction, because a lot of times when we start talking to people, you say, what do you do? And we start to explain this. A lot of times people will say, oh, I get it. It's risk management. and it's not. And I say, no, it's not about managing risks. It's about understanding risk. And there's a difference there.
Huge difference.
And it's about, because first of all, managing risks is not about avoiding them. It's about understanding them and figuring out what risks are risks that you do need to avoid and what risks create opportunities. But also, what red team thinking is a lot more than just that. It's also about finding new opportunities, thinking innovatively about what you do, how you do it, where you do it, when you do it. And so it's as we talked with Gary Klein about, and I talk about this in the book, the whole recipe that he gives, which he said red team thinking was a great exemplar of for success in organizations, is P equals up arrow plus down arrow. Performance improvement is what P stands for in any organization, he said, is a product of increasing innovation and decreasing risk. So thinking more innovatively and making fewer mistakes, avoiding pitfalls.
Yeah.
But risk management only does one
Correct.
of those things.
Yeah.
Six Sigma only does one of those things. They do them well. I mean, there's no dig on them. But design thinking does another one of those things, but it doesn't do the other thing. And the opportunity in red team thinking is that it does both. And it's not just that the tools and techniques do both. It's that the mindset, the red team thinking mindset that we cultivate in leaders that work with us, is all about kind of this looking both ways, looking for risks and things to avoid, but also looking for opportunities and things to improve and do differently and do better. And I really have come to believe that Gary was right, that's the secret sauce there. And you see so much of that reflected in this chart. Why don't we take a short break, and when we come back, let's look at what the expectation is that skills will be in 2027. See where it goes on the list. Hey folks, Bryce here. If you're listening to this and you're liking what you're hearing and you're wondering, am I a red team thinker? We have an easy way for you to find out. Just go to the show notes, click on the link there to our free assessment to find out if you are a red team thinker and what you can do to think more effectively, to lead more effectively, and to make better decisions faster in your complex world. Like I said, the link is in the show notes, or you can simply go to our website, redteamthinking.com. Check it out. I can't wait to see how you score. Welcome back. So we covered the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report for what are the skills, 10 skills that are most in demand right now in 2023. What are the 10 skills that are most on the rise? Let's look now at what are businesses' top 10 skill priorities for 2027. And guess what? Right at the top again still, analytical and creative thinking. Though interestingly enough, analytical thinking has now moved above creative thinking in the chart. And number 3 is AI and big data. And I got to tell you, this is actually really encouraging for me, Marcus, to look at this list, because I'm very happy to see that with all the buzz about AI and with all the obsession about AI, that asking workers and leaders from all over the world what they think is going to be the most important skill in 2027, AI shoots up the list, but it doesn't supplant analytical and creative thinking.
That means
that's what we've been preaching.
Right?
You're right. That means that the people who took this survey are thinking. And this goes to what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
There is hope. Because what's what we've been talking about ever since ChatGPT came on the scene last year. We did a show about it then, and we've talked about it several times since then, is that the real opportunity of AI is not to replace human thinking, not to replace human decision-making, but to augment it, to use AI as a force multiplier. And I think when you look at, maybe I'm reading too much into this, maybe I'm being too optimistic, but as you know, that's not how I normally approach things. But it seems like I think that people get that.
Yeah.
And that they see that AI is going to become increasingly important, but it's not going to supplant basic critical thinking, creative thinking skills.
It's another enabler. And so I was fortunate enough to meet Oliver Yonchev, who's one of our previous guests when we talked about this before. And I saw a video he posted yesterday saying exactly that. He said, look, we need to stop panicking about AI. These are going to free up people to be more creative, exactly what those top 2 spots are. If you're doing work that AI can do, AI is not going to come and take your job. AI is going to allow you to hand off that repetitive work for the AI to do, but then allows you to go and do what a human does the best, to be creative, to do the analysis, to engage with people, and let the other work get taken over by the robot, the AI, which is what we should be looking at how we use this. And this is really, really assuring to see this in the order that it's coming up.
I am interested. One thing that puzzles me about this a bit is now leadership shoots back up to number 4 after having fallen off the chart completely.
And I know
why do you think it is?
I think the realization there is that because leadership is going, they need to reimagine, rewild leadership and bring it back into what it should be. And also the pairing with social influence. What is a leader's job to be today is to somebody who influences people, who can engage individuals, inspire them, and enable them to do all the things that are on this list. And I think that if the realization is that is dying, which means to me it's like the phoenix rising. Old leadership is dead. Leadership is dead. Long live leadership. So the old model is going out. That's been recognized by the previous surveys, and the new model hopefully will get the time now to come back in and be re-energized as it should be. My fingers remain crossed.
Interesting. I hope you're right. One thing I regret here is that the World Economic Forum has changed the way that they display these. And in the last survey from 2020, they actually weighted them.
Yeah, like
so they showed how many people put analytical thinking, how many people put critical thinking, how many people put leadership, and you could see not just a top 10 list, but how much weight was given to each one. And I'd be curious to see that on this. And I'll tell you, here's something that does concern me. Number 8 is design and user experience, which is certainly important, but it's above empathy and active listening. And my thought when I see that is how do you design a successful user experience if you don't have empathy and active listening skills?
Exactly.
The reason why bad UX exists in the world is because, and no fault on engineers, as my mentor Alan Mullally famously loves to say, and engineers are the creators of all wealth, are create almost all wealth in business. But it is engineers suffering from the curse of knowledge, which is one of the cognitive biases we talk about, which for those who aren't familiar with the curse of knowledge, it refers to the fact that people who know more than the average person about something have a very hard time imagining what someone who doesn't have their expert knowledge is going to think or do or experience with that thing. And so I think a lot of times bad user experience is a result of people not thinking about things from the point of view of the customer.
Yeah. Not having empathy and not listening.
Not having empathy and not listening to the customer. So that's one that concerns me on there.
But just overall, though, these are, if you're an organization out there, if you're listening, and obviously we'll share these in the show notes as well. But, what are you focusing on in your organization? What are you focusing on personally, professionally, for your own development? And are these things featuring on your list of where you want to go and where you want to evolve? Because if they're not, I'd love to hear what you're looking at, what's different, how right or wrong do you think these priorities are? Because there's always something out there different that we're not aware of, and clearly not everybody's aware of. But I think looking at some of these, you only have to get half of these right and select the right ones, you're going to have a credible, capable workforce and individuals as individually and collectively, which I think is such a forceful thing to have if people take note. And just the fact that number 1 and 2 is about analytical, creative, critical thinking constantly. And this was the same back in, when was the last one? 2000?
2020. Yeah, it was the same then.
This is the wake-up call. This is why we're doing what we do. This is why we keep banging this drum that thinking is important. And not just having thoughts, but that critical thinking that we don't do by default. It's not the natural state of the brain to do this. You have to learn it. You have to physically engage it. And it's essential. And we're seeing this now from all of our clients. We're seeing this now across society, across the globe.
And it's not taught. That's the thing. Right. It's essential, but it's not taught. How many times do people go through our programs and they say, I have an MBA from fill in the blank, really impressive business school. And why didn't I learn this in there?
Do you know what's even worse? The fact it's not taught. It's eradicated.
Yeah.
It's removed from people. And it starts in school, doesn't it? It starts in a very young age that we go to school because we think we're going to think, and we go to university to think we can challenge. But you don't. You get systematized. You get on the conformity conveyor belt.
Teaching to the test. Yeah. It's the state of education, at least in the US and from what I've heard from you in the UK and I think a lot of other Western countries at least, it's just deplorable.
Yeah.
This stuff used to be analytical thinking, creative thinking, critical thinking. This used to be the core of a classical education. This is what, what education was designed to do. And I think now, it's been reduced in most cases to a set of hard skill requirements that, are, fluency with various, mental models and stuff of business and things like that you check a box and say, yes, I understand how to use that framework and stuff.
That's it.
And that just creates the opposite. It creates laziness.
Yeah.
And people really need this. And I go back, you're back in the UK right now. And when you and I were in London last summer, we had a meeting, as you remember, with several government folks. I was giving a talk to a closed door session in Whitehall, and somebody said, how do we get these skills that you're talking about, these basic critical thinking and groupthink mitigation skills spread more widely? And my answer was, well, it's easy. You run the government. You teach it in secondary school.
Yeah, national.
You could teach these skills in every public school or private school or whatever. I don't know how the difference is in the UK, but every school should be teaching these.
And develop a resilience. If you look at the resilience now of children, look at the increase in mental health issues. Look at the increase in sickness off work. Look at the suicide rate increase. This is all down to a lack of resilience in humankind today, given what's happened and the eradication of what we've been talking about. So if you can enable this at an early age, very early, and continually build and develop this skill, that by the time the younger generations hit the workforce, they're going to be flying. They're going to be constantly challenging, thinking, true contrarians, but in a positive and agreeable way, which is what we try to teach, because that's that lost art of contradiction, isn't it, we talk about, where what do humans do best? We argue with each other. We have great discourse and we get better outcomes and results because of it. It goes back to the Socratic method of just having questions between great groups of thinkers, and the challenge that brings out solutions and answers that none of them knew before they started having that conversation.
And what do we have instead? We've nerfed the world so that nobody ever gets upset. Nobody's thinking is ever challenged. Nobody's opinion is ever assailed.
Or you might offend someone.
Yeah. And as a result, what do kids learn? They learn to shut up and figure out what the right answer is.
Yeah. And they're fearful of speaking up.
And we got to get over this. We got to get over this because it's not working.
Correct. Societal.
Well, on that bombshell, we'll be back with more ideas on how to do that next week.
We will indeed. Awesome chat. Cheers.
Cheers.